this. I feel like I should move this closer. Hello, YouTube.
Greetings.
This is just how I look now.
Me too.
This is no power, Stacy.
That's how I look as well. This is old bald guy Rich.
Full power Rich. Ahoy.
I feel like once you get to 50, full power is just really a relative thing. So
Hi.
I feel like I've said way back.
I did not get to
We sit at different places on the chair, I think.
I feel like I need to be very this is a Mr. Hay habit that I developed.
Yeah.
Sitting on the
It's
end of your
a
chair.
singing position.
I always sit on the edge of my chair, and
Yeah.
it's probably not good. I feel but also I have short legs, and I feel like
but you get much better singing posture.
I feel like a toddler when I sit in the chair. So anyway,
we were just talking about looking at furniture for the new house, which we'll never buy. So we'll end up with a folding table. But anyway, the popularity of the higher like dining room tables and stuff, and
like the bar height or whatever.
Yeah, and I think they're kind of cool, but I've never had one, so I didn't really think about it. And then Gabe, are we actually doing the thing yet or no?
Not on the actual recording, but you're quiet.
So
speak louder.
I will try to speak a little louder, and I'll let you handle the soundy things.
Because I'm so good at it.
With your special magic touch over there. But Kayla and Shelly both said I don't like having my feet dangling. And
you feel like a 2-year-old.
I get that. It makes sense.
Anyway, nobody likes to feel like a 2-year-old. Even 2-year-olds don't like it. That's why they're terrible.
I don't know if we'll have a whole half hour today or not, or if we'll
cut
it short.
Hi.
See how it flows.
We'll see how it goes, because Rich has places to be, things to do.
And the question is, do we have anything to say?
We probably have a lot to say, but I don't know that it's relevant.
We so seldom actually have a lot of things to say.
So we didn't have power this morning.
It's not normal for us to just talk.
No, we're very awkward. We didn't have power this morning. It went off at 4:06.
4:06.
I know that because I was at about 2:06. My cat woke me up, and then I went into my basement and slept down there for a while on the couch. I'm all over all night, and I turned the fireplace on down there. And I heard it click off, and I looked at my phone. It was 4:06. I'm like, well, it got very chilly. So we didn't have power this morning while we were getting ready for school, and that was new to George. And so on the way to school, I was explaining.
I'm
for
sure
him.
He was very quick, and
it was the quickest he's ever gotten ready for school. I'm like, this is fabulous. I'm just going to turn off the lights every day. Because
that's not been my experience as a parent or grandparent.
He couldn't watch TV. He couldn't.
You get outside of the routine, and everything's like, I'm slow now.
No, he was like, let's get dressed. Let's do this.
That's cool.
I'm like, all right, well, this is fabulous. His only complaint was that he couldn't eat anything.
Well, that's a worthwhile complaint.
I'm really hungry. Well, can we go to Speedway? No, Speedway's
I'm hungry,
out of power. I'm hungry, Mother. I really am. Anyway, so on the way to school, I was explaining to him that, for centuries, people didn't have electricity. And he just could not grasp that concept. And I was like, well, even like the pioneers. He goes, pioneers? What kind of name is that? And then I said,
is there pie involved? Because I'm in.
And I said, well, they made it work. They had fires. They cooked different ways.
Fires and pies? I'm in.
And he goes, well, did they die? And I said, well, eventually,
on
but
the
not
Oregon
from
Trail
that.
from dysentery?
And he goes, and I said, well, no, they didn't die from that. He goes, well, they must have, because they're not here now. Well,
kid logic.
Yeah. Anyway, so we didn't get to even go to Speedway for breakfast pizza because they were without power too.
Oh no!
So life is hard.
That's how I figured it was back on. Well, Shelly went to work because they were out all the way down to Witt Road. So they didn't have power at the shop. She went down there to grab some stuff. By the time she got there, the power was back on. And I look out the window, and Speedway's sign is on and stuff. So I'm like, I think we're okay.
Life's tough without breakfast pizza.
And the church is warm, so it must have kicked on soon enough to be warmed up.
Yeah.
By the time we got here.
My house only got down to like 65, which I found out last weekend was what your son keeps his house. He said he kept his house at like 68 degrees. I'm like, are you a lizard?
What do you keep yours at?
72.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Are you a houseplant? I mean, that's like.
I like to be cozy.
Cozy or sweaty, man. That's like, I'm going to be cozy.
What do you keep yours at?
On the high end, like we keep it way higher now than we did before, just because of the different, the dynamic of the rooms and stuff. But 68, so, and that seems warm, but just because of it's a forced air heater and stuff, and so in this old house, which is surprisingly not drafty, by the time it gets ready to kick on, it's chilly. and then it gets hot, and then it's chilly and it's hot. But
It's
so-
warmer upstairs.
But we used to
in my
keep
house
it
for
like
sure.
60 in our previous house, but it was super drafty. You know.
Anyway, sorry. I like to be cozy and warm.
Yeah, but if I'm too warm, then wearing a sweatshirt and drinking coffee becomes unpleasant.
It is a rarity for me inside. If I go outside in the summer, instantly complaining about the heat. But it is a
That is true.
rarity for me to be too warm in my own house.
That's
It's a different kind of warm.
if it's too warm, I want to go to sleep.
Well, that's why I sleep a lot. I'm
I
always
don't
tired.
have time to sleep a lot.
I don't
I
either.
got things to do. Man.
I do too.
I got a
and
podcast and stuff.
I got
Speaking of
I got
which,
bread to make. Anyway, ahoy.
when you did your Hungry Mother, I'm thinking of 101 Dalmatians, and
I just saw on Facebook yesterday that
stuff
it's like
of
the
that era.
75th anniversary of 101 Dalmatians.
so my grandson and I just watched Aristocats yesterday. We there's a guy
Another classic.
watching him for a little while.
Creme de la creme de la
So
Edgar.
it had an Aristocats library book. It
Oh,
was
nice.
from Disney's Wonderful World of Reading back in the day. So we're reading through it. And I'm like, oh, it's really following the story, you know. And he's not familiar with it, right? Because he's 3 or 4, almost 4.
Martin
Forrest. Yeah. I'm glad that you can remember my kids' names when I'm struggling.
Yeah,
but
you know that one.
There's just too many of them at this point. And so we read the book and then turned the movie on for him. And I'm supposed to be working, you know, while I was
Right.
watching it, but I'm hooked because, I mean, like, how do you, I don't know, why would you ever even make an animated movie without Phil Harris doing a voice? Like, you know, I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, so he's O'Malley the Alley Cat.
He's
He's
Baloo.
Baloo. He's Little John. He should be everything.
should be all the
He's
voices.
magical. And you know, I can't remember which of the Gabor sisters. Is it Ava or Zsa?
Oh, I think it was it Ava?
I think it was Ava.
Yeah.
I think so. And she did a bunch of the Disney movies at that point too.
She was in Rescuers, wasn't she?
She was, yeah. And Pat Buttram was in it, who was just always brilliant. Mr. Haney from Green Acres, and what's his name that played Goober on Andy Griffith.
Oh, I know. I can see his face.
Yeah.
I know. Anyway,
I think he ended up in Congress or something, didn't he?
Oh.
But he was.
there's a lot of goobers in Congress.
but they it was so brilliant. Just everything about it was brilliant without some social agenda and all that kind of stuff. But that has nothing to do with anything we're talking about except for the fact that you really are hungry, Mother. And so
that was from 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that era of, Disney, nothing that they make now compares to that.
Oh,
you know, as much as I love them, I love Tangled, I love Frozen, you know, love Moana. None of them compare to that era of stuff. You'll never have another Robin Hood. You know, those are so classic that it's just next level.
Robin Hood was oddly attractive for a cartoon fox.
I know, right?
He was a good-looking fox.
Yeah, you know,
made me question some things about my life.
Every young boy had a thing for Maid Marian. You know, that was just
in my era. I think it was every young boy had a thing for
Jasmine.
Roxanne from a Goofy movie.
Oh yeah. That's as far as the weird ones go.
Yeah,
because Jasmine makes sense.
Yeah, she's an actual human being at least.
My brother was very into Jasmine. So
is this what you came for, people?
And why not? Why wouldn't you be? And
I wasn't into Aladdin.
So.
And I
had a thing for Jessica Rabbit.
Well, who didn't?
So, you know, which reminds me of a 90s country song, but you know.
I think it's a common thing too that more women were attracted to the Beast when he was the Beast than when he.
I know, right? He was a good-looking Beast.
Disappointment when
I was like, that's kind of lame.
If I were turning to him and be like, oh,
can you go back? I don't know.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
There was a distinct masculinity.
There
in the
was,
Beast, right? So,
I don't know. They could have done.
And then
better
he's a
with
prince, and he's like kind of girly.
He was, and he's like, oh.
What's going on?
All right, hi.
I gotta roll my sleeves up. I'm getting warm.
We're supposed to be moving quick today.
Yes, we are, and we're not doing.
We're not.
So
how are you?
I am. I don't know.
I'm not well.
It's been a week. It's been a roller coaster week. A Sunday with the testimonies and testimony Sunday.
It was so good.
It was just such a high point. And
it was.
Right in the middle of this, we got a bunch of other drama, and you know, we were talking beforehand and something to rant about that when we have these high points, these spiritual high points, the devil will often come hard. We're going to
Preach.
face these spiritual attacks. And I tell people that every time when we get baptized or we have a child dedication or whatever else.
Or even when you're like riding a high, you know?
Yeah. There are certain areas in our lives that we know, and we can see this outside of spiritual things as an illustration that I think is very helpful. And I don't mean to like hyper spiritualize other things. And I don't mean to unspiritualize things by looking at general secular activities, but we can see this. The hardest thing in sports is to repeat a championship because everybody's gunning for you.
Yep.
You let your guard down just a little bit. You get a little comfortable with it. So you see those types of things to get elected a second time. You have advantages that come with that because of the strength of your position, but then also you're running against a different dynamic at that point. So the incumbent president has the advantage of being incumbent, but also has the disadvantage of people are looking at your record and what you did. And so there's, and people that maybe liked you before, whether right or wrong, doesn't really matter. What the reality is, they're disappointed because it didn't turn out exactly the way they expected it to. So now you're running against that disappointment. In similar ways, every peak has weaknesses that come with it. And every valley, when we're at our lowest point, we can also find a different level of strength in that. And that can bring us closer to God. And that's really the intent. We see that oddly. I've been thinking a lot about the story of Joseph at the end of Genesis. Oddly enough, I'm listening to my regular podcast, and they're preaching about Joseph in Genesis. I'm like, this is just weird how often this happens.
I want to watch the musical with Donny Osmond.
And the fact that on 3 different occasions, I've heard Joseph referred to as the Prince of Egypt, which he was, even though the movie is about Moses.
Right.
But Moses is coming from Joseph.
Right.
So, anyway, that has nothing to do with it. Prince of Egypt, good movie.
Great music.
Jeffrey Goldblum, always funny.
Great soundtrack. And Steve Martin.
Steve Martin?
Wasn't Steve Martin Prince of Egypt?
What was he in Prince of Egypt?
Him and he was one of the dudes that worked for Pharaoh.
I don't think I knew that. Maybe he was. That's kind of brilliant. Steve Martin's kind of brilliant anyway, but if you haven't heard it,
that cast was stacked.
So if my mom is listening, she
Kilmer?
will probably. I remember that now. If my mom is listening, she'll probably comment on. Oh, she's not because she's working.
I didn't know Sandra Bullock was Miriam.
I didn't either.
Yeah, he was Hotep.
Steve Martin did a song about.
And Martin Short was the other.
It was this sketch he did with some musicians. I can't remember who it was. Some gospel type things. Atheists ain't got no songs. Brilliant, hilarious, true, very true, but hilarious and brilliant. You should check it out.
I will.
He's
a fantastic.
Atheists got no songs.
Fantastic banjo player.
I didn't realize that until
He's
I think
fantastic.
he plays the banjo on the song.
Okay.
And,
He's
and
very
I'm like,
good.
who knew how talented this guy
He's
is?
really good.
I mean, you think of him just as a comedian.
Right.
And
He's a wild and crazy guy.
For a lot of these comedians, you just think of them as comedians,
Right.
and you realize, wow, they're really talented.
Right.
Like the entire Avengers cast, not comedians, but the entire Avengers cast, very musically gifted people. I mean, these are a couple of them are in actual bands and stuff. Scarlett Johansson, really good singer.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's not really what we're looking at. However, as we were talking about high points, we came off of this testimony Sunday, and it just everybody that I talked to, I hadn't left the building yet before I think literally 5 people. I think I don't remember right now, but I knew on Sunday came and said how much this service meant to them, how impactful. You were one of them. That was like, what was the text in the group? It's like, I hate these people. They're making me cry or whatever, I probably said that wrong. You probably didn't say I hate these people because you were raised better than that. But anyway,
Shelly's mad at me because I keep calling her out for saying you people.
You people keep saying you people. But my favorite of all time, my favorite meme of all time, favorite GIF, especially of all time, is peanut butter is always good. Anyhow, but is R.C. Sproul kind of getting angry at the crowd in the Q&A session? It's like, what's wrong with you people? Because he said something and they're like laughing. I'm like, I'm not kidding.
Right.
What's wrong with you people? Anyway, it was brilliant stuff.
My favorite meme is Jesus poking out and saying, I saw that.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
anyway.
so what was it about this thing on Sunday
Well-
that hit you in particular?
Well, I'll tell you. Rachel, who's in the worship band, she kind of hit the nail on the head too. We were cleaning up music after the service was over, and she said, something. I'm gonna butcher her words. I'm sorry, Rachel, but she said something to the effect of, it's good to hear, especially people in church leadership, because you sit there often and you think, I'm the only one feeling these things.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who's been through something like this. I'm the only one with doubts. I'm the only one who hasn't had this light bulb aha moment of coming to Christ. Excuse me. And you hear from these, in this case, these men that you look up to, and they're in leadership positions in the church, and they're sharing very vulnerably and openly that they are far from perfect. And not that we thought they were perfect, but just to hear.
But it's different thinking that in theory and recognizing nobody's perfect, and then actually hearing somebody's story. That's a whole different
But
world.
to hear it so openly, it really, I think, we talk all the time about having a relationship with Christ. And ironically, I saw a TikTok the other day of Russell Brand, who
he said some pretty brilliant things.
He has, but he said that he was, off Christianity for so long in his life because there's so many stereotypes about it. And he goes, what I've come to learn is that I need to have a personal relationship with God. And I thought, well, good for you. Yes, you do. And we know that, but in human relationships, it's easy to think I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever. And we're not. But it's easy to think that you're all alone in that, or this person's better than me, or this person's got it all together. And you're even sitting in church, you're like, man, I wish I was as faithful as that person, or I wish I knew the Bible as well as that person. So just to hear people's stories of where they were, where they are. I mean,
and some of that I didn't know,
right?
And I traveled the road with these guys quite a bit.
I mean,
and it's just really interesting to be able to, hear, like you say, hear that personal sharing in a vulnerable way.
I think the ones that stuck with me.
We may get some background noise.
Yeah, I'm sorry, people are coming in, but
you know.
I think the ones that really stuck with me in particular were Dennison's and Jeff's and Chuck's.
Yeah.
Not that the others weren't great, but just to hear their struggles from the past. And not only that, but I think Dennis in particular, he said, I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
And of course we're all working on our inner demons, but that kind of provided a sense of comfort, like, oh, I'm still working on it too. And I'm not the only one that needs to be working on things.
Yeah.
So just to hear that from another person, especially in this setting where that they're talking to, between 50 and 100 people and whoever else online. And I'm like, man, that takes a lot to get up there and say, I'm flawed. I've done this and this and this in my life. I'm still working on it. That's huge.
And they're all at different walks of life.
Sure,
so our overseers, between the 7 of us, and I didn't share, I'll share on this coming Sunday. I think, I think that's going to work out best, just for the sake of time. Mm-hmm. There's only so many people you can have talking. But of the 6 that shared, we're all from different stages of life and different walks of life. Like my brother and I are pretty close because, we're brothers, but we weren't raised, other than Jeff and I, in the same homes, in the same situations,
different ages,
and we cover, over the 7 of us, we cover from the 40s to the 80s. We cover every decade. Right. And I love that. It wasn't by design. That's by God's design, but not by our design. And so, there's a different perspective that comes with each one of those decades, with each place in life.
Sure.
And so you got, guys that were sharing who, some were not raised in church at all. And some were kind of anti-church. Some grew up as the good Sunday school boy and never really strayed from that. But all of us had the same story in ourselves. We're dead. We're children of wrath. And so to come to the place, Wayne said it before we were doing the testimonies. He said, I just want this to be about God. Well, we didn't coordinate the stories. We didn't coach up. I offered to help anybody that needed to. And I had read Dennis's beforehand because, he'd never done anything like this. And most of them at some point had shared their story,
Sure.
to some extent.
But it's different when you're talking like one-on-one or even in small group.
Right. I mean, in front of people,
Right.
you know, and so, but none of them are trained preachers.
Mhm.
And just like Chuck, you mentioned, it's interesting because the last time that the overseer shared like this was, you know, multiple years ago. Most of these guys were, or probably half of these guys were not overseers at the time. I was out of town. They were, you know, doing that on a Sunday when I was gone. We were in the old building. And so, you know, Chuck sharing his story then versus Chuck sharing his story now is very different. Same story, but he sees it different. He tells it different. He's, you know, and I don't think you could really tell or get a vibe that half of the guys up there were petrified.
Right.
Like Dennis was like, you know, he is scared to death to be staying up in front of people, period. And he was convinced everybody's going to see that. I'm like, dude, until you said it, most people wouldn't have known, you know, because partly because you're doing a good job of it, and largely because God's given you the grace to do what you need to do in this moment, to be able to minister to others. I guess what struck me about it was that each one of them, 6 people, 6 stories, they didn't collaborate or anything like that. But in each one of these stories, they weren't expositional, but in a very true sense, each one of them was a sermon. It was absolutely not, this is about me.
Right.
This is about what Christ has done for me.
Right.
And I think each one of them, whether they realized it or not, intentionally, their natural heart for the Lord and where they're at in their walk caused them to share in a way where they were actually presenting the gospel.
Absolutely.
This is about, like you said, this is about, or like Russell Brand said, this is about a relationship. This is about, you know, Chuck picked a song because each of the overseers picked a song to go with it in the service.
Man, Chuck's song killed me.
And you know, Chuck picked "Yet Not I, But Through Christ in Me." I think the Gettys wrote it. City of Light did it. It's a powerful hymn.
The words are,
and I love it. It's not the first time we've done it. I don't know that any of these were first time. Well, the Man on the Middle Cross was our first time.
That I kept referring to as Man in the Mirror. Yeah, but sorry.
Now I'm gonna have Michael Jackson in my head.
Very different.
But by the way, Gabriel said that on Sunday he told me he had never heard Desperado other than in church when we played it. So he had not heard it other than when he.
What is wrong with you, child?
So it's very young, apparently.
He's a fetus.
He has now. So, but it's just very interesting.
George has heard Desperado.
George is 20 years older than Gabriel too. So George might be at least 10 years older than me. George and Martin should hang out. There's these
just silently
old
judge
young
people.
But anyhow, to see the dynamic and the vulnerability, I think you mentioned that earlier. There's something powerful about it, and just you know, I know we're getting toward the end here, but I just want to read from Acts 2, and this is not what I read Sunday. On Sunday, I read from 1 Thessalonians 2, where Paul is talking about his ministry to the church and the fact that, you know, you could trust this message because you could trust the messenger. And so we loved you so much that we were delighted not just to share the gospel of God, but our very lives with you. We were sharing ourselves. And Paul emphasizes that throughout all of his letters, this whole emphasis of personal investment. And so when we look at Acts 2, and immediately after the founding of the church, nothing's been developed. It's all raw. It's all new. It's all just young and organic. And there's no real structure yet that would come of necessity, that would come. But at this point, you have the apostles, and then you have all these brand new believers, brand spanking new, no discipleship. This is just, you know, a transforming experience with Christ. So as they're coming to this, at the end, we see this description of the church, and I'll just cut to verse 42. It says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, here referring to the remembrance, celebration, or communion. We'll talk about that another time. And to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles.
All the believers were together and had everything in common. So there's this power that's happening because they're devoting themselves. They're actively choosing to devote them. We talked about this recently in the Wonder of Inclusion.
Right.
It seems like we might have talked about it in another one as well. But in any case, their devotion, intentional commitment to doctrine, to the sacred ceremony, and to the fellowship, to being together, to doing life together, not just connecting, hey, how you doing?
Right.
Not just gathering, once a week. They're gathering daily, but they're committed to this fellowship together. They're committed to prayer together. Everything here is a togetherness, and it has the entire company of them filled with awe. And many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles, not by everybody, but by those with that specific gift for that specific time in that specific role. Goes on to say all the believers were together and had everything in common. They're sharing their lives, they're sharing their belongings, and it specifies that so we know the practical implications here. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. So they're taking care of one another. The focus here is all internal. And
Right.
It's not that they're not taking care of people outside of the church, but they're taking care of one another. That's the whole focus. Every day, they continue to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes. This breaking bread is not talking about sacred ceremony, but talking about the kinship, the fellowship of hanging out, doing life together. There's a commitment to one another, to a perpetual intimacy, right? And so as they're doing this, they're breaking bread in their homes and eating together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who are being saved. I think what we see here in the testimonies is very much like what you were saying, to know, hey, I'm not the only one. We're in this together. There's a practical reminder that we're just beggars showing other beggars where to find bread.
Right.
We've found something, and we want you to know this because Jesus is real, and he's real. He is innately real. He is objectively real. He's not real because I feel a feeling inside of me, but he is real to me, and my life is filled with, consumed with, centered on the reality of Christ. And as I reflect that reality, not through some kind of a program or some sort of a forced structure. Boy, that we didn't unplug the.
No, we
thing,
didn't. It's quite loud.
It's kicked right in, didn't it? As we're working through life together openly, honestly, with everything on the table, which, by the way, is another songwriting challenge I have for you, with everything on
Writing
the
about
table
things
here,
on a table?
This openness, this commitment to a perpetual intimacy, that was the nature of the church, and it just struck me in a new kind of way that is part and parcel of why everyone's filled with awe. They're enjoying the favor of all the people. Why are people turned off from Christianity? Some of it is an innate hatred of God and hatred of Christ. That we know that's the case in the world. But why? If people are offended by the gospel, that's one thing. But too many people within the church fail to get discipled because they're turned away or turned off by this institutionalized, sterilized, good cultural Christianity kind of thing, behave right,
rituals, things like that.
And so then we end up hiding.
Right.
And people that you and I were talking about in the Something to Rant About earlier, as we're going through life, when stuff gets hard, if we feel like we have to put on a show, we have to perform for people because I can't let you in. I can't let you know.
And
what's
I've been
going
there.
on.
I've said to you, in
we've
my,
all been there.
well,
at some
and
point.
I've even said, like, I don't know if I should be on the worship team today
Right.
because I don't think I can fake it. And you're like, then don't fake it. And
Right.
so I've been standing up there just bawling. And
And honestly, I think faking it is something that is way too common. And when we say fake it, then
Right.
a lot of us think, oh yeah, we don't want that.
right.
But we still do it. We still act like we have to pretend our kids are well behaved all the time. No kids are well behaved all the
Right.
time. I have to pretend that my faith is a 10 out of 10 all the time. That's not real.
Right.
And so only Jesus is at a 10 out of 10 all the time. And even Jesus struggled, right? He's crying and Lord, please take this from me. Why have you forsaken me? When we see the depths of despair in Christ, that's not sin.
Right.
So why do we think that we have to hide from emotion, that we have to hide from the reality? We are sinners.
Right.
You know, we're saints, but in the practical reality, we still struggle with sin.
Right.
So if we would stop hiding, stop isolating, when things get bad and the fertilizer hits the fan, then instead of running away and hiding in our basement or curling up on the couch or whatever we do to stay away from people, when we run into one another, that's what God's called us to. When Jesus prays in John 17 that God would make them one, make us one as he and the Father are one, that's what he's talking about. That we would have this intimacy with one another where we do life together. We live in this life in such a way that there's no mask, that we are in the truest spiritual sense, spiritual only, of Genesis. Genesis, when we look at the creation account, right? And the man and the woman are naked unto one another and not ashamed. That's what we are supposed to be in the church. Again, in a spiritual sense
Not
only.
literal.
Let's not ever, please get dressed before you come to church. When we say come as you are, that's not what we mean.
Come as you are in clothing.
But there is a reality to just being able to,
Right.
to unburden yourself and know that this is a safe place.
Right.
Is it ever going to be perfectly safe where nobody's ever going to say something I don't want? No, that's unrealistic.
Because
and
we're all
dumb.
people.
Well, that's right. And we're going to disappoint one another.
Right.
And sometimes those hurtful things are the things we need to hear.
Right.
So, in your relationship with your mom, with your parents, siblings, whatever, do you ever have, in the best of relationships, a time where they never tell you things you don't want to hear? Of course not. That would be a terrible relationship.
Right.
In reality, we have to be better than that. And so in church, we need to be able to unburden ourselves, to be able to come and not just constantly dumping and wearing things, on our sleeves and always looking for drama, but being open and honest enough to be able to say, you know what, my life isn't perfect and neither is yours, but Jesus is.
Ooh, good place to stop. Well, we didn't go short today, did we? I don't think we can. Hi, Jeremy. Thank you for tuning in.
We probably picked up some time in our goofiness at
We
the
did.
beginning.
A goofy movie. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us on this Friday. I thought you were adding features to add pop. Pop like soda? Oh, pop like pizzazz. Nope, it's just us.
We're adding the Riz.
Oh no. Anyway, we'll never have Riz. Unless you're talking about Rizzo the Rat from the Muppets.
That would have been a much better marketing move for Sierra Mist than going to Starry.
Nobody wants to drink a soda called Riz.
Nobody wants to drink a soda called Starry either, right?
True.
So how is that better?
I'm a
We're
Sprite,
back- we're
I'm a
back in the
Sprite
rant
girl
about,
myself.
so-
Anyway, farewell. Happy weekend. Stay warm. Hope your power stays on.
Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.